First of all, I just want if you could explain why it is that you don't want your faces to be shown on camera.
Yeah, I just think that we don't want a face to be identified with the entire movement, and we've just been set on that from day one. So I think that keeping that, like maintaining that sort of faceless and nameless identity sort of thing, just for the safety of everyone involved.
Because
Safety is the main concern during the Barnes Center protests. There were several student protesters that were receiving threats, so we don't want anyone to be easily named or identified as being part of the movement for everyone's safety.
So, can you explain why you're back? It's mid-February. Students are now back here. Explain why you come back. Explain why this occupation is going on.
The timing of this occupation is very intentional. The Barnes Center sit-in occurred at the time that several incidents were occurring, and although there are still incidents ongoing on this campus, we wanted to stress the point that this movement is not reactionary. There doesn't have to be a specific graffiti drawing or a specific racial slur yelled for us to acknowledge the systemic issues that exist at this campus, in addition to us wanting to address the inadequate response of the university in their handling of how they carry out our demands.
What do you think it said, though, that we had about a 2.5 week span where we had an average of about one bias incident every 3 days?
It means that the university is not doing its job.
Yeah.
There's racism everywhere and there are incidents of hate everywhere, but the continuum of the events that happen here and the short time frame that they happened in speak to how complicit the university is in not making adequate changes to stop these things from being encouraged.
What's a way, they talked about how the commitments made last fall were violated. In what ways were they violated?
One of the easiest to pinpoint is that the administration signed off on notifying the student body within 48 hours of any racial bias incidents, and that was violated, I want to say, within 5 days of the demands being signed, where a incident happened where 2 students were walking and were called a racial slur, and that was not put on the DPS website until nearly 4 days later. And in response to that, DPS issued a statement that they can't always meet this 48-hour deadline for the purposes of the investigation, which is just not true and not acceptable.
Explain why that's not acceptable. That's what we've heard from them. They're like, we can't meet this, exactly like you said, they can't meet that 48-hour deadline because we're compromised in investigation. Does it matter more to you that these people are caught or that students are learning about it, or do the things go together?
I think
It would, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, both are equally important, like, just for everyone's safety. Like, everyone should be aware of, like, as soon as a bias incident is reported, I think an alert should go out immediately, just because if the administration knows, everybody else should know. For everyone's safety, first of all, like, where this is occurring and where, like, which place to steer away from. And it's just, like, why wouldn't you want us to know what's occurring on our campus? It's, like...
Additionally, the explanation of them needing to take more time than that to notify the student body because it's helping with the investigation, just like factually is not lining up because only 2 perpetrators have been caught. So it's like if you need more than that 48-hour window, then why weren't they caught? So it's not increasing the rate of them catching perpetrators by them notifying us late. It's just putting us in more danger because we don't know what the dangers are.
Yeah.
What about the fact how when they go up on this bias incident webpage, there's no email that goes out to students, and DPS has said that they did that on the advice of law enforcement professionals who said that that could cause copycats.
Yes. So we anticipated some pushback to all of these demands, which is why in our current addendum to the demands, we clarified that instead of quietly updating the website where people would have to constantly go back on their own and refresh it and look for changes, a very easy compromise to that would be DPS sending an email every time there's an update to the page without specifying the details of the incident except for on the page. So if they don't want to encourage copycats, they can still send the student body an email that the bias incident website has been updated so that we can go check and read the story ourselves.
Isn't that the type of thing that when DPS is talking about to prevent the copycats, it's sending out the email at all would still do that?
Sending out an email with no details, I don't believe would encourage copycats. And if they're posting it on the website anyway, then the full information is available to everyone anyway.
Sure. Talk about the other ways that DPS, or that Syracuse University has violated the demands.
The request for multicultural learning communities, we specifically in our expansion of the demands, the original demands, asked that there be an effort made to put a multicultural learning community in every dorm. Not only did that not happen, but the new MLLC was placed in Ernie on one of the smallest floors in Ernie, which does not have room for the amount of students that want to live in that space. Additionally, they added an additional barrier to being able to live in the multicultural learning community by adding an essay requirement, which was never the case before. All that we asked was that people have the chance to indicate whether or not they were interested in living in that community, and that people who did not indicate interest not be moved onto that floor. And by adding an essay component, they created another barrier for people who just want to live around people that make them feel comfortable.
And then I understand something else is that there hasn't been monthly updates emailed to students, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Talking about what else has been going on to try to understand what you're doing here, how long do you plan this occupation would last?
Hopefully the university will take adequate steps necessary so that we don't have to be here forever. We're all students. Several of us have jobs and internships and places to be, and we're not being compensated for this. Like, this is not our job. So hopefully the university will respond in the way that we ask them to respond, and we won't have to be here forever. But we're very dedicated to making this a permanent fixture on this campus as long as it needs to be here to stimulate change.
And what is this Friday deadline that you have?
That's just the new deadline since the administrators disregarded the original deadline that we sent for the resignations, which was January 13th. So this is just our new sort of deadline that they can abide by if they choose to.
And we understand there'll be some sort of escalation if those resignations don't come by then?
Yes.
Can you tell me anything about that?
No.
I can't speak to that. Hopefully, I don't understand. I don't think that there's any excuse for the university not enacting student demands when none of them are harmful and all of them benefit every single person on this campus.
Peeling back a layer to understand this movement, how long has this specific occupation been planned? I know you mentioned that this isn't coming, it's not reactionary. Could you tell me how long to possibly understand that?
I would say about a month.
A month? A month. And I want to try to start talking about these new demands that you have. Some of the topics come to mind are freeze and tuition. Can you explain why that's so important to you?
Again, our movement is meant to support every single student on this campus, with one of our main focuses being eliminating financial burden for students that can't afford this university, because college in general is very expensive and it's a privilege to be able to attend a college or university. And part of our goal for eliminating financial barriers for people to receive an education is stopping tuition from going up any higher than it already is.
Is that a temporary stop or is that forever?
Permanent.
Forever.
Syracuse University has a huge endowment. They get donations all the time, and they can make do with the money that they already have.
What about the demand that DPS officers shouldn't carry guns? Explain why that one is so important.
I mean, they are peace officers, and we just feel like they shouldn't be carrying any weapons because there's no need for them. There just simply is no need for them.
What do you say to people who could say they could prevent a school shooting, or someone with a gun at the school who has an attack, and those peace officers, since they're already here on campus, could stop them? Do you want to see more SPD on campus?
So we understand that in extreme scenarios, why people would want some kind of police force to be armed, and we're not calling for the disarmament of SPD. If there was a serious enough incident like a school shooting, SPD would be called anyway. So we don't believe that it's necessary for DPS, who more regularly interacts with students and has had a track record of negative history with students of color, to carry weapons.
What about, so what you're saying is the relationship with DPS is that much worse than the relationship with SPD? 'Cause
Not much. I wouldn't say that it's worse because I can't speak for everyone's experience. What I would say is that DPS interacts with students of color on this campus more regularly than SPD does. And like you alluded to, the only situation in which DPS would need firearms is if there was a serious enough incident like a school shooting or things of that nature. And in that case, SPD would be called regardless, so there's no need for DPS to be armed.
So it's part of that reason so people feel safer. The lack of a gun makes them feel safer.
Absolutely.
I would love to talk with you guys about another demand, which is about saying that the school release the names of people who commit bias incidents. One of the big questions that we've already heard is how would you address the legal concerns of doing that for the university?
We did our research on that, and there are several other schools that are in the same caliber as Syracuse University that are allowed to release the names of students who violate their student code of conduct. We did the research on this, including the research with FERPA, and FERPA allows for the releasing of those names if a student has violated the student code of conduct.
Can you talk about how the counselor option and students choosing counselors, is that not an option now? You can't choose your own counselor. I personally have never had to.
The counseling process, unfortunately, is very difficult. You cannot choose your counselor online. You have to call. And for that reason, there's not an option to select a specific counselor because it's over the phone. And in addition to that, that coincides with the waitlist problem, which is why we requested a specific ratio for Syracuse to at least meet the national average of a 1 to 500 student ratio, so that there aren't extensive waitlists.
So what it says on the website now is, during your initial consultation, you will provide information about your presenting concerns, relevant history, and have identified possible goals for counseling. At the end of your appointment, your therapist will provide related recommendations and options that best meet your needs. Is that not enough?
Pardon?
Is that not enough?
Right, but the thing is, like, for example, if I request a queer person of color counselor and there are only 2, there's a problem because there's like also a wait list, and so I'd have to wait months or even like weeks or months to even get like in there for one session. And it's just like, why shouldn't there be a ratio of people, like queer people of color, when it's a high demand?
Basically, the two coincide. The demand for a better ratio of counselor to student and the demand to be able to see the counselor that you feel most comfortable seeing. If one changes, it affects the other. If there's a better ratio, then there are less wait lists, and then people can see the counselors that they need to see. And without either of those changes, the other doesn't change.
Going back to the first 2 I mentioned about the tuition freeze and the DPS not being armed, is this something you honestly believe that DPS, that the university would change? Do you believe that's actually feasible?
Currently, we don't have a lot of faith in the university, which is tragic. But if the university is serious about making students feel safe at a school that they pay so much money to go to, they would take these demands seriously. They're not unreasonable. Students and faculty can be involved in that hiring process.
So, say the chancellor resigns tomorrow. Who's in charge right then?
The interim is
Would it go to
John Liu.
And that would be acceptable?
That's the interim for right now.
Okay.
Of course, like being a person of color does not make you a good chancellor, and that's not what we're saying. But if he is doing a better job than Kent, he's welcome to stay. And if he's not, then we would call for his resignation too.
Have you worked with administration on any of the issues that have come up in any time recently?
Administration has come into the space on different occasions, and some have spoken to certain students, but we as a group have not received communication from people like the chancellor to sit down and talk through and negotiate our demands.
And that includes over the past couple of weeks?
Yes.
What about last week with the Board of trustees being here, I understand Nottingham SU got to talk to some of them. How did that go?
We did. It was a productive meeting. I cannot speak for what the Board of Trustees' actions are because so far they've not taken any. We were obviously glad to have the opportunity to speak with them. We know that that's not a common occurrence. But the way that the session was intended to run was a voicing of student concerns. And that is not how we went into the meeting because we feel that student concerns have been made very clear. And we have a very clear direction of what we'd like to see from the school and how the Board of Trustees can help with that. So only time will tell if the Board of Trustees will follow through.
One of the demands is for free printing and laundry across campus. Why is that so important?
It's just to make everything more accessible because a lot of people have like laundry stacked up for weeks just because they can't afford to pay washer and a dryer, you know what I mean? And it's just like this university has so much money and we're already paying so much out of our pockets. There's just no reason why we have to pay for laundry. Like it's literally like a lot of campuses are compensating for laundry and printing, and it's just unreasonable, honestly, for a university like this.
And that ties into the existing like focus that we've had for several months now about alleviating financial burden for all students.
Finally, I always try to ask this whenever I do interviews related to Nottingham SU. Do you have any specific stories that you believe prove how people of color are treated on this campus that kind of can help people understand why these topics, these issues are so important to you?
I think even further, there are several stories I think that anyone can look up online of how students are mistreated here. But the larger issue that we've been trying to focus on is that there are systemic things at the school that are letting people get away with treating students of color the way that we're treated. And I can speak to that personally. My freshman year, I was called a welfare queen and harassed by someone on this campus, and I and several other people made racial stop bias reports against this person. The school decided that it was not their issue and delegated it to the Office of Residence Life, and the Office of Residence Life asked the RD to speak with the student, and she declined to speak to the RD, and no further action was taken by the university. So when processes are as vague and as ineffective as that, and people can walk away without having conversations about race or about how their actions are impacting people, people continue to act this way and we continue to be mistreated.
Yeah, I mean, there are things like this every day that happen. I mean, like the first week into my fall semester, I'm a freshman, and like this white kid called like a group of my friends monkeys while we were going to the laser tag thing in Goldstein, and then we reported to DPS because they were right there, and then DPS went to talk to the student, and he was let go after like 10 minutes because he had mental health issues, and then they spoke to us and kept us for 2 hours asking us all about our family history, family background, and like it was like 12 a.m. and we were still there talking to DPS. The other student literally don't know his name, they didn't even ask for it, so we were right there.
Before I let you guys go, is there anything else you want to say?
No, not really.
We hope that the student body, the administration, and the community continues to support our movement, and that our completely reasonable demands are met to make this campus better for everyone.